With it being 7 o'clock, we will get started. Good evening. It is 7 o'clock on June 11th, Wednesday. I'm calling this meeting of the Chelmsford Planning Board to order. My name is Chris LaValle, and I'm the chair of the board. Tonight we'll be following the posted agenda. The meeting tonight is only in person, not on Zoom. But the meeting is being televised live and recorded via Chelmsford Telemedia and will be available on their website and on YouTube. We do not have Anita present tonight, but the rest of the board is here. So we will get started. So first item on the agenda is public input. Public input shall be limited to statements from the public related to any issues within the jurisdiction of the planning board, but are not currently the subject of a pending or upcoming public hearing before the board tonight. Public comment on any pending public hearing shall only be heard during those hearings. So is there any member of the public wishing to speak? With there being none, we'll move to the next item. Old Westford Road, A&R. It was continued last meeting, and they have submitted another request for continuation, so I will take a motion.
I will move that we continue the A&R for Old Westford Road.
And they are requesting till next meeting,
Which
25th of June.
25th? Okay.
I second.
So motion by Mike, second by Deirdre. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Moving on to the next agenda item, 191, 195 Riverneck Road, preliminary subdivision. Is there a member?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Douglas DeShane from Finneran and Nicholson, Newburyport, here on behalf of the applicant. Also with me this evening, Casey Ferrara from Howard Stein Hudson. We're before you this evening with a preliminary subdivision plan for 191, 195 Riverneck Road. I know the board is familiar with the property. Just wanted to let you know for the record that we did file our subdivision plan with the board on June 4th, and that on June 6th our application was stamped in by the clerk. So I think we've established our time frame. So with that, it is a pretty straightforward 3-lot subdivision. With that, I'm going to let Casey give you an overview of the technical proposal, and then we're happy to answer any questions or address any issues you may find. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, good evening to the board. As Doug mentioned, Casey Ferrara with Howard Stein Hudson. So this, actually, we don't have a plan up, but I can just walk through it. No Evan tonight?
Nope. It's all me.
I usually look to him. All right, so as you can see, so what currently exists there is 191 Riverneck Road, which is to the right, a larger expanse of a parcel, about 6.5 acres, and then 195 Riverneck Road, which is that little single-family house that you see on the bottom left-hand of the screen there. That's about half an acre of property. This preliminary subdivision plan encompasses both properties utilizing a right-of-way far right of the site. That right-of-way will create a roadway that would be approximately 320 feet in length to the cul-de-sac, and that would grant frontage to 3 subdivision lots which would be proposed within. Lot 1 is about 97,000 square feet, Lot 2 51, and Lot 3 57,000 square feet. As part of our preliminary plan, we've provided preliminary grading and drainage as well as required, and that grading basically shows that the subdivision road would be graded at approximately 2% down to the cul-de-sac, and then stationed within the roadway would be 2 catch basins about halfway down, and then another 2 catch basins within the cul-de-sac. So a total of 4 catch basins, which would all be piped to treatment, and then to Lot 3 includes a 15,000 square foot drainage easement, which would be granted to the town as part of the right-of-way, and that would contain all of the drainage for the roadway there. As required, there are proposed to be sidewalks on both sides of the roadway. And I believe that covers the general gist of engineering on this preliminary plan.
Okay. Before we get to questions, I know there is another preliminary plan before the board for this property. So I'm assuming that this
Informal.
is to freeze zoning?
Let Doug take legal questions.
Well, I don't think we've actually filed any
No, you have not,
plans.
but
We've
you
had
have
an
proposed,
informal discussion.
yes.
So yes, that might be a good assumption.
Okay, thank you. I just didn't want us to go down too much of a detailed path if this is an administrative
I
move.
understand.
Thank you. All right, so with that being said, are there any questions for the proponents from the board?
I have a question about the sidewalks.
Sure.
You said there's sidewalks on both sides.
Correct.
That doesn't seem to be indicated on the plan.
If you look on the layout materials plan, there's sidewalks
Oh,
should be on either side of the subdivision plan itself doesn't show it, but the layout materials plan should show it.
I think it shows it there.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, it shows it on that.
All right, so the sidewalk abuts directly on the property line
It runs up from the right of way and then ends at the River Neck Road intersection, yes.
then? Right,
And it goes all the way around the,
All the way around the cul-de-sac.
okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. No other questions.
any other questions?
Could you maybe provide a little bit more details about Lot 3? I'm kind of curious how that division there with the retention pond that's going to be there wouldn't be interfered by stuff being put on that lot.
Well, essentially, that easement grants an area for the town or whoever would take over the road in the end, which likely would be envisioned to be the town, to do drainage infrastructure. Currently, that could be proposed as a surface pond, and any improvements that would have to go through a site plan process to be built would have to be designed to not negatively impact that drainage area, or a proponent could propose alternative mitigation to provide that same storage below ground or some other method, but all that would have to be laid out in a site plan that would have to come through this board.
And what approximately is the buildable area in that back portion once the retention pond goes in with all the easements and things?
The buildable area of Lot 3,
Yeah.
probably in the range of 30,000 square feet.
And
Not
if-
by building, just by lot area.
I get it. And with the proposal of the way that the drainage would be running towards that back lot, anything that would be built upon there and things going through it, there's potential with, is there any potential for any water issues occurring?
That would all have to be figured out through hydrologic, design during that site plan phase of the Lot 3.
Given that this is preliminary, what we've done is just essentially identified an area that we're very comfortable will more than accommodate what we need. I assume from this line showing, well, that's the 40-foot setback for the structure. Casey, theoretically, could this drainage easement area be shifted, closer to here, to the cul-de-sac itself? And I think by doing that, bringing it over to here, which really would work fine because the water's running this way on the roadway, that would allow this area to be expanded even more. I would suggest the driveway would come in here, the house would sit back here, and then the drainage would be out front, but then that drainage doesn't flow towards the house, it flows to the wetlands in the back, is that correct?
Yeah, there would be a
I
number
think
of
your
ways
question
to.
is, are we gonna channel water that's eventually gonna then run to the house? But
Yeah, well, I was kind of thinking if a driveway goes in there that's adjacent to the retention pond, would there be any water issues that would occur from that? Because I think part of that you're showing as being a potential easement, water easement, I believe.
A drainage easement, yeah.
Drainage easement.
easement, yeah.
What are these areas currently zoned as?
This is an
IA.
IA district.
And would this type of subdivision change the zoning?
No.
That's essentially why the subdivision is coming before us. My guess is that the discussions we've been having about CB Light have triggered this coming before us, because CB Light's potentially, this might be a good area for CB Light, given our discussions, and given the potential projects for this area, it might not be compatible with that zoning. So this process is a way to freeze the zoning.
And I know I went by there earlier today. I mean, it's heavily wooded there. Is there a count of approximately how many full-size trees are in that area?
No, they're significant.
If I may, Mr. Chairman,
Come on.
Preliminary subdivision is really just setting the stage for a definitive subdivision. You don't have to file a preliminary subdivision. As you know, we could come straight in with a definitive. But if you're filing a plan with the hopes of freezing zoning, the way Massachusetts law reads is that if you file a preliminary plan, which is then followed up with a definitive plan that's approved within 7 months of our filing here, then the existing zoning on the property, once that subdivision is approved, the applicable zoning district on the site is frozen for 8 years. But in terms of the process of the subdivision itself, we generally file a preliminary just to give you an overview of what we're doing. Allows the board to ask the very questions you're asking, and sometimes boards will make suggestions to us about changes they want to see. Once we go through this process, then we go back to the drawing board and we do the actual drainage and locate that pond and locate the direction of flow. So your comment is actually a good one for a preliminary subdivision, because you're telling us one of your concerns is how is this detention pond going to affect the driveway? Is the flow of water going to be directed at any time towards the house? So now Casey knows, in going back to do the definitive plan, we should address that comment and make sure that when we come back with our definitive, we can say to you, you asked us a question about the flow of the water or the impact. Here's how we addressed it. So your questions are great ones, and they are usually what we come in for in a preliminary, is to understand what your thoughts are, what your concerns are, so that we can address them. So now that you've raised it, when we do the definitive, we will know to make sure we provide the detailed analysis that Casey suggested. So, and that's true with all questions that you guys give us or comments you have. So thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
I do have an additional question. That the lot that Saritha was mentioning, lot 3, you mentioned that 30,000 is buildable?
Somewhat in that range. I don't have an exact number.
So for it to be a valid lot area, it has to have 80% contiguous.
Dry.
Right.
Yeah, that's related to resource areas and wetlands and such, not easements.
Right.
Right, so this would create a detention area, but it would not create a resource area that would be considered unbuildable of
No,
sorts.
but so are there resource areas on there right now?
There are not resource areas.
Okay. Never mind.
I have a question. So if you look at the drawing, it shows the on-ramp and it shows the lot line. And in between there, I presume, is the wetlands?
There are no wetlands in the locus of what you're seeing here. I
Oh.
believe there are some that are further up to the left behind the office buildings, but those are not within our developable or buffer zone area.
Yeah, it's wooded area, but it's not wetlands.
I misunderstood.
There's one on the interior of the loop of the on-ramp, but that's 200 and something feet away.
Well, Casey, I think I caused the question, or caused
Yeah.
the confusion. It was my understanding that
Doug,
whatever's here.
Doug, could you come up to the microphone, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thanks.
Yes, I apologize. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the water from that detention pond will eventually flow to the wetland.
Well, there's no wetland here. It would flow either off-site or fully infiltrate on-site.
Okay, but if it flows off-site,
This way.
it will
Go into the on-ramp?
We're its way down to the on-ramp.
It would work its way towards that area.
The
So I
on-ramp's
guess I was
elevated, so it would
incorrect.
go
Yeah,
into
to the
that.
on-
I was incorrect in stating that it would be directed to the wetland. Rather, it will be directed, and then, you know, as we know, water flows downhill, and usually to the lowest point, which is the wetland. So it may get there eventually. However, if we're recharging within the pond or the basin itself, then it'll reach the aquifer and
Pristine condition.
get there that way. I'm sorry for my
Oh, that's
mistake.
fine.
Any other questions? All right. With none, I would entertain a motion if people are ready to vote tonight on this.
Again, I would reiterate that there are several steps to this, right? So the first being a preliminary, which we would have to come back with a full definitive subdivision plan, which again would only create lots, and then each lot would have to come back with a site plan / special permit if required, or special permit for aquifer protection district. So this is by no means
Yeah.
allowing any sort of development or anything. It's just a step in the process.
I will entertain a motion to approve the preliminary subdivision plan.
I will make that motion. Seems it needs to get out.
Okay, motion by Mike,
I'll second.
second by Deirdre. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. The preliminary subdivision is approved. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
We'll be back.
Good night.
Can't wait.
Take care.
He's way too excited for that.
All right, next up on the agenda is new public hearing, 300 Billerica Road. This is so Nexus Recovery LLC requesting a special permit per section 195-5, use table line C5, to operate a hospital as the most appropriate use for the proposed acute treatment / detox facility and any other zoning relief deemed necessary. The site is located in the IA zoning district and is shown as parcel ID map 87, block 291, lot 2. Do we have a representative?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Brad Greenstein. I'm here on behalf of Nexus Recovery, LLC. As some of you may know, our counsel was not able to join. His plan was to join via Zoom, which was not available for tonight's meeting. So I will likely defer legal-related questions to another hearing. I'll take notes. And I'm really here, I think, to answer any questions you may have about the operating entity that would operate from that address. And as you also likely know, I'll just say we submitted a special permit application, along with it a narrative of the proposed services, a site plan, 2 floor plans for floors 1 and 2, along with sewer flow calculations and the other required documents, owner authorization, the deed.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board? So, actually, before we get into that, this essentially came out of the request from Jose to essentially look at this use that's most closely associated with the hospital. That was Jose's take on it. If we, in our discussion, find that it is not an appropriate use, then we'll have to communicate further with Evan and Jose. But that should be part of the discussion tonight about whether or not this use is associated most closely with the hospital compared to all of the other uses we have, as well as the special permit discussion as well. Before we get into board questions, Joel, do you want to read the letters?
Sure, thank you.
He's been waiting for this.
Here we go. Yeah, there's several letters. First, the no concerns letters are from Chelmsford Water District, also the tax office and from the Chelmsford Police Department. Jose, as Chris mentioned, Jose sent a letter to us basically saying that he agrees with the proposal that this is a hospital use, and that it requires a special permit for the use regulations. Board of Health has looked at this as well. Board of Health in particular looked at the kitchen. I'll just read the letter. This proposed excerpts of the letter. This proposed project has plans for a kitchen facility which would need to meet the state sanitary code. Gives the code minimum sanitation requirements, standards for food establishments. This project must also meet the Town of Chelmsford provisions, Chapter 201, Board of Health, Article 9, food service and retail food establishments. So they looked at it for that. This proposed project must submit a food plan review, including a full set of stamp plans. Once the food plan review has been approved, the applicant must apply for a food establishment permit from them. And then if this project plans to have a dumpster on site, then it must meet Town of Chelmsford General Provisions, Chapter 201, Board of Health, Article 5, Commercial Refuse, Dumpster Collection Licensing and Operation. So that's what the Board of Health looked at. Then also we have the fire. And basically it's a pretty standard fire letter. All pertinent codes and standards, including but not limited to, and then they list a bunch of the standards, must be conformed to. Separate permitting for the fire alarm and sprinkler systems will be attained from this office. All standards would be met by the appropriate use groups determined by the registered design professional for this project. Quarterly inspections to be required of this facility by this department per MGLs and CMRs, and then they add, this office would approve of these plans with the above noted conditions. I ask that this letter and these conditions be made as part of the decision-making process in the public records. So we want to keep that in mind in any decision that we issue. And then DPW, and this is from Sheila Joyce in particular. They performed a review of the documents that have been provided to us, and they comment specifically about sewer flow calculations as well as comment on the dumpster stuff as well. So as far as outstanding engineering issues that are not addressed, provisions for an enclosed dumpster pad and dumpster should be depicted upon the plan sets. The long-term and perpetual care of the dumpster, including the emptying and the enclosure, will be the responsibility of the property owner. So that's an open item that the DPW considers there to be, so we should keep that in mind. And then site plan review requests, they are requesting that a sidewalk, DPW is requesting a sidewalk to be added within the right-of-way along the frontage of 300 Billrica Road to tie into the sidewalk being constructed along the frontage of 270 Billrica Road to improve pedestrian connection in the area. This is not a requirement for approval, but the applicant should strongly consider willingness to contribute. And so we may agree with that and voice that same concern or not. And then with regards to sewer comments, no increase to the Town of Chelmsford sewer infrastructure shall be more than 500 gallons per day. The existing office building at 300 Billrica Road has a 10-year historical sewer flow average of 5,350 gallons per day. The maximum allowable increase in sewer flow for the site is 500 gallons per day, totaling 5,850 gallons per day. Then they go through a lot of calculations that I won't go into with you. That the DPW will work with the applicant, Sewer Division, and Weston and Sampson to confirm if the adjacent sewer line and pump station have the capacity to handle the flow. And then they put in bold, this project should not be approved until adjacent sewer line and pump station capacity has been confirmed. If there is capacity to handle the proposed flow, the sewer capacity credit transfer policy allows non-residential property owner to increase the associated flow into the sewer system under specific conditions. And then they do a calculation of what that remuneration should be, and it comes to $1,391,250 shall be paid to DPW sewer prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. So the calculations themselves are in the letter. Recommended stormwater management conditions. No changes to exterior buildings or changes in impervious area are proposed in the submittal. No stormwater calculations were submitted. No stormwater review was conducted. Site stormwater system O&M plan should be updated and sent to Chelmsford DPW. It is the owner's responsibility to provide completed annual compliance records to the engineering department at 9 Alpha Road, so certainly we could consider whether we want to at least have an understanding of what the existing stormwater system is. Recommended general conditions of approval, and they have 3. As-built plan should be submitted, and then they give the details on that. The DPW shall monitor and enforce sewer flow limitations and impose penalties for violations thereof in accordance with the town sewer policy. And all handicap parking signs must meet the requirements of MGL Part 1, Title 7, Chapter 40, Section 22A. And there'll be a quiz afterwards as to whether you remember all of that. And clearly and legibly display the following message: handicap parking, special plate required, unauthorized vehicles may be removed at owner's expense. And that is those are the town letters.
Thank you. All right. Now we will get to board questions. Mike, do you have any?
Nothing particular at this stage.
Okay.
I think there will be questions.
Joel?
I read through the narrative, and I agree with the applicant and also with our zoning enforcement officer. I think that the use that best fits this use is hospital. Some of the other things that were mentioned by DPW, I agree that I would be interested in knowing what is the existing stormwater because of the issues with contamination in the general area. In particular, I'm guessing that there is not infiltration, but that would be something that we would want to be sure isn't happening. So I'm just in general, wanting to be aware of where the water is flowing right now, at least. And I think that is the extent of the questions I had.
Okay. John?
Nothing at this time.
Deirdre?
Nothing at this time.
Marcy?
In looking at this, like one of my biggest questions, concerns, I guess, might be is you guys are really saying you're only going to be using a small amount of the first floor of that building. What's being proposed for the rest of that first floor?
Sure. So I believe our proposal for the first floor is to use
18,000.
right,
And
18
that's gonna
of,
leave like
of
55,000.
55,000.
Yeah.
So our plan for that is use the 18,000 for the administrative functions of the second floor, which is the actual medical services. Our plan would be, once the program starts to meet its capacity, we could add ancillary uses down there. I would say recreation and possibly non-clinical services. I think if we ever decide to use it for clinical services, we could review that with the town. If it increased capacity, bed capacity, we recognize we'd have to come back in front of whatever the applicable board would be. But right now, our thinking is use it to add to non-capacity space.
Okay.
And, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I had a follow-up question on that specifically. So you're going to be leasing the space, I'm assuming?
Nexus Recovery would be leasing it
Leasing.
from Ferris, or
Okay.
the technical owner of the property,
So
correct?
is there an agreement in that lease to not use the other space for other uses, that it would be essentially reserved for you, for Nexus, if they?
Yes, the lease is for us to have occupancy of the entire building,
Okay.
whether it's being used by us at that time or not.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
So you would not be subleasing it?
We would not be subleasing, correct?
You know what, I did think of another question that I had that I couldn't locate. I know that you stipulate that the clients would be voluntary, and this is probably a little bit of an off-the-reservation question, but my question is, despite the fact that it's voluntary, once you voluntarily go into the treatment, would the clients be locked in? I mean, it wouldn't be a locked unit?
No. So with voluntary treatment comes voluntary, discharge of treatment. So there are involuntary programs for both mental health and substance use, the Section
Right.
11, Section 35.
Mandated.
Court mandated, that would not be our program.
Okay.
So theoretically, there'd be people leaving at strange times?
in theory, I suppose, but facilities like these have a lot of protocols to ensure that there are not irregular discharges. And to the extent that a patient insists on an after-hours discharge, we would provide transportation. That would be sort of a red line protocol for us. We would have that transportation on site. It would be a rule of discharge. And there's a number of operational ways to sort of ensure that it goes that way. And having had experience operating and running a number of these facilities, those protocols work. But most discharges are planned. Transportation is arranged well in advance. But in those exceptional cases where it's late hour, we're prepared to provide transportation off-site and to wherever the appropriate placement is at that point.
So this will be, they are required to stay there for a certain amount of time, not like we come in the day, we leave at night, like some other.
It's an overnight program. Average length of stay, 3 to 4 weeks. These are services that are paid for by both public insurance, Mass Health, as well as your commercial private insurances. And in this day and age, insurance does dictate in a lot of cases how long the course of treatment could be, in combination with how the patient is presenting and whether they meet medical necessity criteria. But generally speaking, over any period of time, 3 to 4 weeks tends to be the average length of stay for someone. No outpatient services, no ambulatory come in during the day, leave in the evening.
Anything else, Marcy?
Nope, I'm good for it at the
Sarita?
moment.
I have a couple. Is there an area that's going to be provided for them to walk around outside during the day? I think I did see a smoking area, but is there an area where, I guess, inpatients of this would be walking around?
Yeah, so we haven't contemplated at this point like an outdoor recreational area outside of the smoking one. We understand that if we were to do that, that would be a site plan revision, and we would come back and talk to you guys about that. But right now, that's not intended. And we do have this first floor if we want to really expand sort of activity or recreational experiences for the patients.
And what businesses are currently surrounding this?
Well, you got a warehouse on one side. Across the street, you have 3M. You have the Knowledge Beginnings. I forget what's past that. And then on
Mass Ioneer, a couple of doctors and dentists, and then on the other side is, I believe, where Press Cafe is, and there's a few other small
the
businesses in there.
yeah, Triton and whatnot there.
And where on here again is that smoking area outside?
What was the question?
They have a smoking
Where's the
area.
smoking area outside?
Oh.
Not as familiar with the site plan.
It took me a while to find it, but
Do you know where it is?
I think it's right in that back square there.
Yes, right here.
I believe it's in that area.
okay.
Yes, it is. There's a table. Yeah, there's some tables there.
All right, and then I agree with Joel. I'd be interested to see the stormwater in the area, and I did like the idea of the sidewalk that they were talking about.
Smoker's patio.
And my understanding is our architects and engineers will interface directly with DPW and address any of the pending questions from their letter.
Okay.
That's all I have at this time.
All right. I had a couple questions. I think you answered most of them. So there's not, at this time, other than that potential sidewalk, there's no other outside work being planned for this use?
That's correct.
Okay. What is the proposed possible use of the additional parking that's plentiful on that site?
I don't think there is a plan
Okay.
right now. Frankly, we've done our preliminary calculation of necessary parking, which we put at 100. We believe that's an accurate number, but for right now, there's not a active plan for the remaining balance.
Okay. And for the parking, would you limit the parking for this facility to a certain area, or would it be essentially open to wherever people wanted to park?
I think we would try to limit it to a certain area, particularly to offer lighting and other, safety and security features. As it's a 24-hour building, so there are going to be people that are leaving at 11 p.m. These shifts are typically 7 a.m., to 3 to 11, 11 to 7. So lighting and easy access to people's cars, especially at night, is very important to us. So we'd probably try to keep people close to the exits that they would use on a regular basis.
Okay. So that may be good to indicate on the next set of plans.
We can do that.
That actually just made me think of another question. Is there an area on here where stuff will be dropped off for supplies and things? Is there any sort of delivery area?
I think there is a loading dock.
Several loading docks on the
yeah.
backside of the building.
Yeah.
I guess we haven't really identified which.
I'm gonna say, I
Maybe,
don't,
maybe on the left side there, maybe might be or actually,
I don't see a loading
that's
dock.
closest to the freight elevator that would go upstairs.
Okay, we can indicate that on the,
Okay, thank
on the
you.
plan, but we would expect to have those particularly for food deliveries. And
Okay.
Yep.
And then just make sure that the next set of plans is a stamped plan,
okay.
because I noticed that this one's not.
How does this compare size-wise with the other Nexus Recovery Centers?
So Nexus Recovery Center doesn't have an active inpatient program right now. We're in the initial stages of licensure for outpatient-based services, but this is an inpatient, so it's different.
So this would be the first inpatient one that you...
This would be the first inpatient one that we do.
So when you were referring to when you're involved in...
I think as individual partners in this entity, a number of us have extensive experience providing these identical services in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, but Nexus Recovery is a new entity doing this for the first time.
So in terms of the ones that you've been associated with, is this in the same ballpark in terms of size?
Yeah, I was associated with the one in Danvers, which is 217 beds, one in Westminster, which is approximately 120 beds. So similar, a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller.
I see.
Yep.
In addition to the stormwater, that would be good on the next set of plans, snow storage
Snow storage.
would be good. And I would think that since there's so many spaces, snow storage within parking spaces
Yes.
would be a good idea on this one.
Yep.
I think there's adequate space.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing I was thinking of is potentially, I don't want to even call it a traffic study, but some type of minimal traffic study for those intersections where the entry and exit points are for the property, would be good just to see, because you have one entry and exit right across, and then one, well, they're actually both similar. I don't see a problem with it, but it would just be good to confirm with the study.
Understood.
I guess one more thing I would love to see is if indeed there's a number of, I mean, I don't know what the number is, it's probably somewhere on the plan, but if there's an inordinate amount of unneeded parking spaces, I wonder if the architects could consider, reclaiming some green space and, I don't know, having a low water use meadow or something that would...
I could take
pocket
it back to
park
the
maybe?
owner, the property owner. Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's something we'd want to discuss, though, because right now it's impervious, and if you create pervious, now you're introducing more infiltration into the area, which
Right, which we know has
may not
problems.
be a good thing given the groundwater
Proximity to
contamination.
other, yeah.
But it wouldn't hurt to potentially show it as an option,
Right.
so we could discuss it.
Yeah, and that's why also I was asking about like a walk around or something.
Mhm.
Like,
The outdoor space for their clientele.
Yeah, and that could be something that both the operators and the building owners are amenable to.
Maybe the people that work there want to get outside.
A little bit of fresh air, this is all good.
Right.
Just go over to Preston.
All right, any other questions? So I think, given the need for some additional work on the plans, the DPW comments about them still needing to determine the capacity, would you be prepared to come back?
Public comment?
Yeah, I was
Okay. Sorry.
gonna get to that.
Sorry.
Would you be prepared to come back next meeting?
Which is 2 weeks from today?
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. All right.
So is this, are we just granting a permit for the use, or are we also performing site plan review? Because
It would be site plan review.
because this is just it's just identified the request for the permit. There isn't a site plan review mentioned in the application.
We should talk with Evan, because I think it depends on the DPW request for the sidewalk.
Yeah. So we'll just want to straighten that out, because right now, at least, it doesn't identify that we're doing a site plan review. And so I think
Understood.
we want to, if that's what you're
Is-
wanting us to do as well, then I think we want to make sure that's included.
Yeah.
I think right now our priority is understanding the use
Okay.
allowance. And after that, any type of site plan review, I think, would make a lot of sense. But to understand this board's position with respect to the use is the most pressing question.
All right.
Well, I mean, then we could, after receiving public comment, we could vote to approve the use.
Correct. That's kind of what I was thinking.
Okay, okay.
We would do.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
Great.
All right. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak? Had a feeling that was going to be the case, but I had to open it up. All right. So let's then discuss as a board the proposed use as it relates to the table line as being a hospital. Thoughts? I think you said.
I already gave my
Yeah,
thoughts.
you already gave your thoughts, so. Others?
I can't think
On
of
the
anything
use.
else in there that's closer.
Deirdre?
I agree with the use line in the table, if that's the question.
Yeah. The question is it appropriate to apply the hospital use to this
Yeah.
use? I'm
Yes.
seeing a lot of nodding.
I think yes.
Yeah, I think it's
So
pretty
I was
unanimous.
just reading over something just before I, yeah, no.
Yeah, I think it's pretty unanimous that it makes absolute sense for the hospital use to be applied to this facility. So let's make it official with a vote. All in favor of hospital use being,
Do we need to close the public hearing?
no, not for this.
All right.
So all in favor of applying hospital use on this?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
All right, that's unanimous. So we will apply, we agree with Jose's application of the use for this. And I think if you're prepared to come back in 2 weeks, we can talk through that process, some of the details. We'll have to check in with DPW. I don't know if they'll have their answer before that meeting. But if not, we can work something out to figure that out.
And just a point of clarification for me, by approving this as a hospital, are you saying that we can proceed on that basis, or you're saying that you agree that that is the
We
closest
agree that it's an
definition?
appropriate application.
Okay,
That's the
And so
category.
then the next step is the, continue with the public hearing for the special permits.
understood.
So, all right.
Great.
So I'll take a motion.
You'll need a motion to continue the public hearing.
Yep.
And we're going to the next meeting?
Yep.
Okay, so moved.
Second.
Motion by Mike, second by Deirdre. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Nice meeting you all. See you in
Guys.
2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
opened a beehive.
I want to know that answer too.
Can you guys hear me when I talk into the, where do I have to be? Here? I'm just checking.
She still can't figure out the mic.
I can't. Because I think when I talk here, it's, you can't hear it, right?
No, I heard that.
Oh, you can?
Yeah, I could hear you fine.
But I think you were further back before.
Okay. I'll try to get close.
And I'm a little hard of hearing, I think.
I'm learning. It's okay.
All right, so the next topic. Where's my notes? Is continuing our CB Light discussion. I'm actually going to take these out of order. We will close out the Kate's Corner neighborhood discussion, essentially by me saying that based on the last meeting, I updated the slides and the manufacturing proposal definition, finished that up based on the input, and so we have attached it to the agenda for Kate's Corner neighborhood, so we can officially close that one out tonight. And then we also attached it to Middlesex Street one, so we can continue that discussion. So given that, and I want to close out Kate's Corner before we get into Middlesex, are there any last comments from the board on Kate's Corner before I go to offer public?
I do. But actually, it's more of a question. That is, I received a call from, and I don't remember the person's name, unfortunately. She doesn't have internet. She can't drive a car. So all she can do is watch us on well, how
media.
could she if she doesn't have internet? But in any case, she raised
You
the
can watch
question.
on Chelmsford telemedia, so.
She raised the question, is liquor sales something that would be allowed in the new CB Light? And her concern was the location of the CB Light zone to the school. And so I said, I don't know. I said, that's a good question. And I don't think that we have liquor sales specifically identified as a use.
I think that's regulated by the select board's
Yeah, that's true.
It
permitting.
is, and you know, I find it hard to imagine a store selling liquor to the elementary school kids.
Wait a few years.
So I
Teachers.
don't think we have a use for that in the
Yeah.
table.
Right, yeah, that's what
So
I-
it wouldn't be
We have a
applicable.
restaurant use.
Yeah.
But the neighborhood character
Right.
would be
It's not
considered
allowed.
by the select board.
Select board
Yeah.
is doing that,
That
I would
yeah.
think so. Okay, so it's really select board.
Yeah, that would be a
okay.
select board issue.
Okay, good, thank you, just wanted
Toss it
to,
over to them,
And there's only a limited number of licenses that can be granted, so.
yeah.
yeah.
And I see
I
Aaron's
think
taking notes.
they're changing that at the state level.
Yeah.
Like, they're in the process of doing that right now.
That was it, so got a call from a concerned
Okay.
resident, so I thought I'd share it with the board.
All right. So any public comments to close out Kate's Corner discussion?
Just wondered what that meant, closed out.
Oh, okay. So these discussions are essentially a preliminary step to get our information and proposals ready. All of these proposals will go through a formal public hearing process that we'll talk about later in the meeting. Any zoning requirements or changes that we are proposing as a board do need to go through a formal process. There will be abutter notifications. There will be public input. This is essentially just our process to close out the first draft of the zoning bylaws, the definitions, and the proposed map. So that's what closing out means for this step. It's just closing out this step. And then down the road in the summer, I believe, which we'll start talking about, it will be we'll be taking on significant public hearings for all of our zoning article warrants that we're going to be proposing for town meeting in the fall.
Thank you for the clarification. Are you proposing changes for Kate's Corner?
Could you come up to the microphone for that question, please?
Are you proposing changes for Kate's Corner? Are you gonna change the zoning for that area?
We are proposing the changes. We reviewed them last meeting.
I know I missed that meeting.
They're linked into our agenda tonight. We have, I can pull up. So these are the changes we are proposing based on this new zoning and the desire to clean up the zoning conflicts in that area. All right. Any other comments on this before we move on? All right. So we will move on. I will start preparing the Kate's Corner discussion for public hearing, and we'll talk about the timeline later tonight. 5559 Middlesex Street. So we have the narrative that was submitted a while ago from the owner of Chelmsford Landing, or Landing at Chelmsford Mills. We have the request for rezoning. The one thing that I was hoping Evan or the owner would be here for tonight is a little bit more clarification on this green. I think
Which green?
it's a different owner.
Yeah, that's what I thought he said. There was something. I don't remember, though.
Yeah, but I think Evan might have added this green in, but the owner submitted this
Yeah.
entire space. So
I think that green was there before,
was it? Okay. I just wanted some
but
clarification
I don't know
on
what
that.
it's delineating.
Yeah.
So I thought there was something. I thought there was something else on that lot besides the area he was looking to do.
So there are two different mill buildings on that. There's one over here and there's one over here. If you look at,
Right.
it's a little odd shaped.
So is that a different lot?
Well, where the green is, it looks like it goes around that building and then the parking lot that encompasses it there.
What I had to do is I went to
The lot area.
the GIS map.
What's the address?
51 Middlesex, and for some reason it can never find the address. So,
Was it a range of dresses? Is
Yeah,
that
maybe
why?
a hyphenated number.
Yeah.
there. So if you look at this property, it is
Oh.
one property and then,
Oh,
there's
that's, so that's why the
one.
green is there.
Yeah.
It delineates
This is
that
another one.
specific property.
So there's actually three.
yeah, there are
Yeah.
three
Yeah.
properties here.
And so, I mean, it would make sense to have the zoning apply to
All of it.
all three. Agreed?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I don't know what's in those buildings. I think we need to find out what is in those
Make
buildings.
sure we're not zoning something that's already there, but,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if that's the case, they would be grandfathered in.
Yeah, but we might create some pre-existing non-conforming issues in the future. So I would just like to see what is currently in there, kind of like what we did with the Kate's
Yeah, that
Corner.
makes
Yeah.
sense.
Those, I did go through the map, and that's one question I had for Evan. If you look at the zoning overlay, so there's a significant piece of IA in here.
Can you blow that up?
I'll try.
What is that address here?
Is everything that's in that area now today actually IA, like?
All the gray area.
No. I actually went property by property.
I want to say, because isn't that little triangle across, like by the yellow, between the yellow and the pink, aren't those houses?
Yep.
So this is CD, but it's actually
The pink. 8
RC. These areas are residential. That I think is residential.
So then we'd be yeah,
Yeah.
we want to make that.
This
residential.
is residential.
That's a big lot.
A couple of these are
It's like the,
two families.
The
A lot of
flooring.
these residential areas over here are two families.
there's like that flooring place, there's a funeral home, there's a
Yeah,
Kurtz
this is the
place.
funeral home.
How do the lots look along the river part coming out?
So the river's a mess.
Right, which is such a shame.
You have the railroad
prime
company
real
owning
estate.
this.
Yeah.
You have railroad owning these properties.
Okay.
This is Chelmsford Mills.
Chelmsford Mills.
This is railroad. Already saw that. I think this is railroad 2.
Is that area that you said is owned by Chelmsford Mills, is there anything on it?
Nope. And I don't think either one of these. So I don't know what Chelmsford Mills is.
Right.
So there are it's a lot of area in here. Based on what I could see, a lot of this could be zoned, depending on what's in these mills here. All of this could potentially be rezoned CBLT. This little piece here is really a multifamily housing. You have a lot of RC type of properties here, a lot of RC here.
So I guess, like, what are we thinking that we would like, what's the direction that we want to see that moving?
So I think in this space, we could almost completely eliminate the IA zoning except for the railroad.
Yeah.
And figuring out what that Chelmsford Mills lot is.
Yeah.
It's just
Technically,
land, right?
Right, well, yeah, right now it's land, but what,
the funeral home we could extend CB into the funeral home.
yep.
What was the higher one up there? Because the funeral home's the lower. What's the,
The what?
when you move your mouse down there, what's that one?
This is funeral home.
The whole thing?
The whole thing is,
Okay.
yeah.
This is MBTA.
What do you mean? That's the train, the train owns that land?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's probably a switch station
Okay.
in there. So I think a lot of the train section would have to stay IA. But everything around it,
Yeah, I think if it's
given what's
residential.
in there,
Yeah.
could be RC, CB light, CB. So we could clean this up significantly.
Yeah.
I think it would definitely be clearer.
This was identified as an area in the zoning
Zoning
complex.
Conflicts, yeah, absolutely.
Now, they extended that area all the way up into Vinyl Square. I'm not sure we want to go up that far. And it also extended it all the way, the other way towards the Lowell border.
Well, I mean, the mill owners across the street, I think, are involved in the Vinyl Square zoning. I mean, we probably should engage them as stakeholders.
Yes.
Because, I mean, the two certainly are not only contiguous, but also similar.
Yeah.
And if we're trying to devise a plan for how we would like this to be redeveloped, it would probably make sense to have both.
Mm-hmm.
sides of the street involved.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure how deep into some of this we want to go. I think it could potentially get a little too big for what we're looking to do.
I'd love to see that building down by the softball fields be included, though, and yeah.
Where's that?
Isn't that it right there above your cursor, straight up?
This one?
Yeah. Mike, is that right? Isn't that near your field? You could cross the,
I don't even know what that is.
No, you're thinking of the stuff at the end of Watton?
Yeah.
That's, I believe, farther over.
further to the left.
You go down to the point in Vinyl Square, and you'll see where,
Where am
keep
I?
going.
There it is.
Toward Vinyl Square.
So what's... Actually, let me make this a little bit less transparent, or more transparent.
Okay, I guess maybe that is it.
That's
yeah.
what I thought it
Yeah,
was.
it's
That
that
is-
big
That's that
building at
building.
the end of Wanton.
Yep.
What is that?
Is that even
It's-
used?
Yes,
No.
there's somebody running a
There-
company in there.
There are uses in there. There are people in there. I'm not sure exactly what they were doing. Somebody
Should be a
described it
beer
to me
garden.
once, making some kind of
Perfect.
particular.
Over the
Is it
river.
manufacturing?
Over the
Yeah, it's a
community garden.
manufacturing use.
So I'm not sure we want to get too into that one.
Well, not without talking to them and see what they're interested in. And who knows?
I mean, it might be perfect for CB Light. What, I don't know what they're doing.
No one knows what they are, what they're doing, so.
But I guess my question is, do we want to go that far? Or do we want to just focus
I would.
on this area?
Would you do it
It'd be
in,
better to
do you do
just
it
focus
pieces?
on the area where the property owner is desiring the rezoning, and then, because I think if you go into Vinyl Square, you're gonna get, I'm not saying we shouldn't go there at some point, but you're gonna get into a whole host of
Yeah.
discussions and
Start
issues.
small.
We can
Take
start
little
there and then
bites.
work our way.
Some bites.
That's what I was kind of thinking, is that we tackle this
Yeah,
IA area first.
and then slowly work our way northbound.
Because this is definitely an area that needs it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Joel?
Sounds good.
Okay. All right, so what I can do is I can put together the zoning tags like I did before for potential proposal. I did it on paper, but I didn't do it on a slide. For our next meeting, I also want to see if Evan can do a little research on some of the uses that are in
The other two buildings.
the other two zoning buildings.
I actually looked at the owner's site, looking at the other properties that they have, and I was surprised to see, at least for this property, there's only like one vacant property or one for lease property, and it's 1,000 square feet. Like,
I'm gonna say, cause isn't in one of them like the indoor batting cage thing, the
I think it's one of these
the
two.
aerial,
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking
Studio,
about.
the Om.
Thank you. Like I couldn't think of the word. Like you know that thing. It's been a long day.
Yeah, I think the batting cage and that studio are in one of these buildings, I think.
I think it's in the weird shape one that we're looking at, but I'm
Yeah, I'm
it's
not
been
sure.
years since my kids played softball, so.
Can you scroll left real quick? Where was that building that Deidre was talking about?
The one up by the softball field.
Yeah, how far away was it from this
Uh,
area?
Go up.
It's a
right
ways.
there.
Right, it's right
It's the
there,
softball
though.
field is in that green
down
area.
next to the bowling alley, you go down the hill.
Okay. Doesn't seem that far away.
No.
We wanted, it would be nice to know what's in there. If
Yeah.
You could ask Evan.
Yeah, but then we get into this space over here, this, so,
Well, I mean, everything in between, most of it is residential, except for the,
Well, there's a big chunk of town land. There's about 10 acres of town land there,
well, so that stays public.
right there.
Yeah.
so I would like to focus our initial because we have limited time
I
Yeah,
get it.
for
I
the
get
fall
it.
town
I was just
meeting.
curious if you were.
Yeah.
I was just
start
saying
with
if you were
this.
asking Evan, maybe he knew what was in that other
Yeah,
building.
that's just a question to ask. Say, hey, Evan, what's in this
Mike said it
building?
was
For future.
fabric
I
manufacturing.
think they make some kind of peculiar fabric.
For years, for driving down there for softball, I always thought the place was abandoned.
I did too, and then someone corrected me.
And so, like, this is the first time I was like, oh no, there are people. I'm like,
Yeah, if you do Google Maps, there are cars there and everything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a bunch of trucks. They got a.
it must be because we do softball at night and on Saturdays no one's there. So, but I'm driving by and I'm like, surprised this isn't like big X on it, fire hazard.
All right.
And then Chris is asking
Yes.
Evan about like what's in that other building, like across the way where it just says Chelmsford Mills. Like, who owns it? What is that?
Oh, this one?
Yeah, is that the parcel that says Chelmsford Mills?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can
Somebody's
ask 'em.
sitting on it.
Yeah, just curious as to who.
It's amazing how they have the water right there too.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay. So, before we continue that conversation, are there any other comments, questions on this area?
No.
Okay. I also started drafting a similar slide deck for this one as we did for Kate's Corner, so I will start drafting that and attach it to the agenda for next meeting as well. So we have that same slide deck context for any discussions we have for this. All right. Moving on. All right, Fall Town Meeting. There are no continued public hearings this week. So Fall Town Meeting, I gotta get back to it.
Can I ask a dumb question?
Mm-hmm.
Back on our Kate's Corner
Yep.
changes, what was the YVIII again?
Oops, wrong one.
In the use table? Can't seem to find it.
This one? The indoor,
Well, it was for a few things we used it, and I just don't know what it stands for.
so it's the VII.
YVIII.
The Y is yes, and so the VII,
yeah.
it's
Did
8.
that correspond with a footnote or
Or is it
something?
like parking
Yeah,
lot accessory use?
It's the footnote. A special permit from the planning board shall be required if more than 10,000 square feet gross floor
Oh,
area
yeah.
is devoted to business use on the
Yeah,
premise.
I'm sorry, I was putting the Y into the,
Now, the Y is the yes/no planning board.
right, makes sense. Like, that's not on my key.
Sometimes you gotta like have it showed up.
All right, so for Fall Town Meeting, based on the discussion we had last meeting, I started putting together slides. This is the current definition. So massage is yada yada. And then Part D, the massage therapists related to the Board of Health. So the proposed change is, that was suggested by town council on this one, was to take the definition from the state definition of massage.
Which makes good sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I copied and pasted that. And then the massage therapists, the wording he suggested is massage therapists that are essentially licensed pursuant to the state regulations.
Yeah.
So hopefully that will clarify things. Thoughts, comments?
Looks like a slam dunk to
Yep.
me.
Sounds very sensible.
I'm not sure that we want to say that right now.
Yeah. Oh, be optimistic. I think this.
That's what we said last town meeting, too.
That's true. But you don't mention families in here, so.
No, but
Well, I mean,
history
we're
on
just
this one
trying
might
to,
be a
like,
little.
bring it into alignment with
Yeah,
the state's legal.
and that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah. And then the use table change that was suggested was making it by right. So instead of special permit, it would be by right in all those same areas. Okay. All right. So for town meeting. Where is it? Pulling up Evan's email. He sent me an email with proposed dates, and I'm trying to find it.
Oh, for the town meeting?
Yeah.
Are we talking about at the end of the month one?
There
Or
it
the
is.
fall one?
Fall.
That's what I thought.
It's the third
I
Monday.
just had a little panic there.
Oh, no, not the special town meeting, no. Don't have time for that.
I think isn't the fall town meeting like the third Monday of October?
Yeah, and.
I think it's like, because I just looked it up, it's October 20th, because I just realized I'm going to be out of the country.
Jeez, you're going to
Here's
do a
like
lot of
around
traveling.
In October.
Get it in your suitcase, I'll
All
go
right,
with you.
so fall town meeting dates. Select board, he said usually signs the warrant on September 8th. So that likely means we need to open the public hearings for those articles August 13th meeting
At the latest.
at the latest. And then close on the 27th.
Are we gonna have, how many meetings are we gonna have in the
Well,
summer?
that's what we gotta discuss.
Okay.
This is assuming we have all the meetings in the summer. If we need more time, we would have to open the town, or the public hearings in July, or have a special meeting in August.
I would suggest we open them in July.
Because there's
Don't-
no,
Get it behind us.
Squeeze ourselves.
That's kind of what I was
no
thinking.
harm, right? With bringing him earlier, there's no harm to that.
Yeah,
Right,
And if we decide to cut some meetings out, it won't.
yeah, it
Bind
gives
us.
us some
right.
wiggle room.
Then we
All right.
have that flexibility.
All right, so I'll work with Evan to get them on our July 9th meeting.
Wait, so I guess I don't have town meeting on my calendar yet for October.
When
I don't either.
Yeah, so when I looked at
Ew.
the website, it just says the third, typically on the third Monday.
20th?
20th.
20th.
First night, 23rd would be the second.
What?
20th the first
20th.
night, 23rd
23rd's the
second.
second.
Okay.
I'll be there for the second night.
Yeah, these will probably be second.
Typically,
night.
our articles are second night.
I think. I took the dates. It's a 14-day cruise.
Flying in.
All right,
I will be.
so we'll target July 9th as the start of those. That should give us enough time.
How much time does he need for the notices?
2 weeks, I think.
Yeah, it's 2 weeks, so
2
we
weeks.
should have enough time. That means my June's gonna be busy creating slides. And I've got to do some research on the definition of family for that batch of,
You just said you're going to separate those, right?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
they're all gonna be separate. It's gonna be painful, but yeah, they're all gonna be separate. I even want to separate out the CB light zoning and definition and table from the areas that we're
Actual
putting.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah.
Definitely agree
I'll
with
probably
that.
present it together to give people an overall view.
Context,
Um, but I definitely want to separate out the 3 separate votes.
I think that makes sense.
Lessons learned from MBTA zoning. So yeah, we're going to have a number of different ones. We'll separate out family, general changes for school considerations. I think there'll be about 8, if I remember my list correctly. CBLT definition and table, the Mills, Kate's Corner, definition of family, school impact, massages, and then,
What we were talking about tonight, right, too? That'd be there, too? The 50, what's the address?
The middle section.
What did you say?
55 to 59.
yeah, that's what I
okay,
consider
Mills.
the Mills.
Okay, the Mills.
And then the other one was, I had another one. I don't know what that one was.
Did you say the massage?
Yep.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, I don't remember what the other one was.
Yeah, massage, light industrial, right?
That's what it was. Thank you. The industrial definitions. So it would be the CB light definition and the light industrial changes together.
Light manufacturing.
Yeah. So it'd be CB light and the light manufacturing definition and table. It'd be the Mills, Kate's Corner, family definition, school impact, and massage. And there would be the massage definition and table.
Okay.
All right. All right. Next item, the state planning grant. So Evan did submit the application.
Good.
If you want to look at it, you can look at the link. I'm not going to open that now. But we should discuss some prep work before the consultant is onboarded.
Did we get the grant already?
No.
Okay.
Joel, do you want to talk a little bit about some of your ideas?
Yeah. I totally forgot what they were. I had to look at the email
Me too.
I sent you.
So I passed the buck to you.
Yeah, well, it just occurred to me that, I mean, because I asked Evan last time, when would we actually bring the consultant on board? And so he thought that was going to be end of the year, beginning of next year. And so as I was thinking about it, I was thinking, there's stuff that we can do in advance of that to be prepared for the consultant. And so I was looking at the strategic plan, and in it, what they ask for example, objective 1 is in developing the managed growth strategies to find a clear strategic and integrated approach for managed growth using fact-based blah, 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 blah. And under the performance measures, develop guiding principles and core values, which Evan also mentioned, for each component. And then they have a list: land use / zoning, economic development, housing, environmental, open space / natural resources, infrastructure, social, and fiscal. And so I thought it would be a good thing for us to, at least as a first step, to see what of those things, in terms of the guiding principles and core values for each of those things, what of that already exists in terms of either in the strategic plan or also in the master plan. And to identify then, some of that or a lot of that may already exist.
Right, and maybe
And we just say,
together-
okay, we've identified what these are because of these sources, and then identify where there are any holes. And then, get cooperation from who the relevant parties are in each of those categories to get their
Yeah.
input. So I didn't know if we wanted to divide up those categories between us.
Do you read them again?
Yeah, well, it's the slide, I can't even tell what slide number, 14 of the strategic plan from our last meeting, the PDF.
Okay.
But it's the first objective under managing growth in the performance measures. It's the first bullet. But the list is land use / zoning, economic development, housing, environmental, open space / natural resources, infrastructure, social, and fiscal. So, I mean, I think John is an obvious one for fiscal. Chris, I think, is an obvious one for, well, except for you're doing
Open
everything
space.
else.
I would rather not.
Okay. All right. Well, then one of us can take environmental. I think environmental and open space natural resources go together because that's Concom largely, I would think. Housing, I think you actually have a few parties there. You have the Affordable Housing Committee, you have the Housing Plan. If we
Housing
have a
Advisory
housing
Board.
plan, the advisory board. You also have the Housing Authority, and so forth. So housing would be multiple people there. Economic development, I mean, that's actually talked about quite a bit in the master plan, along with the land use zoning. So we could sort of see who wants to tackle that.
I think that needs to be more of a group effort.
Group effort, okay. Yeah, I can certainly take the first step in sort of summarizing what at least I think exists in those things, on those things. And then infrastructure, which to me is kind of a vague, and social. Infrastructure and social are two ones that, I mean, infrastructure seems like some combination of town manager, DPW, who knows? And social, I really,
I would have no idea.
I don't even really know what that is. So, anyway, I thought it would be good to,
Talking about like social, like in here, social like growth, like
What page is that?
manage a core component. What are the guiding principles and core values for social in a managed growth strategy? So, I don't know, does that have to do with like, how this impacts the social life of the town in terms of like, oh, we want, more happy spaces in the center of town or something? I don't know, so.
I don't know,
That
people
was a
care
little bit
about.
of
Think
a
of it
mystery
as
there.
communities, if you wanted to talk about like the different, South Chelmsford, East, West,
North.
are distinct communities, but I don't know how they're more geographic communities than
Yeah.
social communities, so I
Yeah,
don't know.
right, yeah. So I don't know, maybe we should ask that question of the strategic plan committee.
But there are-
Here I am,
Provide
and
insight,
Quite
yes.
honestly, I haven't got a clue.
Well, there's a lot of,
Kind of got by me a bit.
when I think about that, I think about all the different groups in town that give their time and care about things, like that want things to happen and they're all pushing for things to occur. And there's all these subset of groups and sometimes they're fighting each other, but that's kind of what I think about that.
Good, sounds like you just volunteered.
Sounded like the
Aaron, do you have any
Well.
insights on that one? You could come up to the microphone.
Putting you on the spot.
Yeah, sorry. I think the problem with some of the language that you guys are bringing out, and admittedly it's real, is that some of the language is vague, and I think candidly, it's okay to make an interpretation or make a decision on how you interpret to act upon that. Because I think if you got the committee back together and asked each one of us what we mean by that, I personally would be more closely aligned with what was just said, kind of the social fabric type of things. And we've got a really diverse population and a growing diversity of population. But I certainly would support and encourage the board and would like to work on however, I think the progress that's being made right now sounds really fantastic. And I think however you want to interpret that from moving forward. And if that definition changes or that understanding changes as we learn more, I think that that's okay too. This is definitely not a set in stone at the moment
Yeah.
type of thing. It's really just a guidance document. So
And
I'm not sure that helps, but
We also could, take it upon ourselves to say, well, we don't know what this means, and we have a lot of other things that we think are very important that we're gonna focus more on.
Yeah.
I could definitely see and support that too, because there's a lot more in here that's probably feasible. And if we have success, or I'm sure we will have success, but if we have success on half of them, I'd still say it was a complete win.
And they also impact each other. There's a lot
Yeah.
of interconnected.
Thank you, Aaron. In terms of the timeline, Evan gave me some dates, that the state announcements will take place in October for the grant. Contracting would extend November, December. Upon the grant award in October, the town could issue an RFP with a 30-day response deadline. And then we would have to rank submissions, conduct interviews, and recommend a firm to the select board for approval. I think for that type of stuff and for moving forward with some of the stuff that we gather, we should create a task force like we had talked about. I've got Evan's suggestions here, and it's very similar to the other task force that we're developing right now. 2 select board, 2 planning board, 2 former strategic plan members, 2 former 2020 master plan members, 2 town meeting reps, and 2 residents at large. So it'd be a pretty big task force of 12. But having 2 of each category would give some contingency planning in there if one person couldn't make it.
Yeah.
I think if we have this timeline, we would have to appoint the task force, like Evan suggested, probably no later than the end of August. Have the meeting start in September to kind of get things together, gather our material that we've collected, and then work on selecting the firm to then take all of that and develop the plan.
What would be the product of the task force? Like what is done for the task force?
We would have to figure that out as we develop the task force.
Yeah.
Do we have, I feel like this came up at one of the last, maybe the last meeting. Do we know of other maybe similar or like-minded communities that have developed a strategic plan that we have that's
Nothing
worthwhile?
like this. Well, they've developed strategic plans, but nothing like a managed growth strategy that we're being asked for.
Yeah, I suspect that every town that's tried to tackle that has run into the same set of worries, headaches, and problems.
Yeah, and Evan has done some analysis of this, and his take is that most places in the Northeast don't do a managed growth strategy.
partially why we're having all the problems we are.
Yeah. He's seen it in other parts of the country, but he hasn't really seen it in the Northeast.
It's interesting.
Because I did ask him when we initially had this discussion, I said, is there some other managed growth strategy in the area that we could build off of, even look at for how it's structured, how it's been developed, reach out to the town to figure out what their process was, and he said no.
Closest ones in
I
Canada.
wonder if something, maybe Bozeman, Montana or something, I don't know.
And maybe that's something we can think about asking the consultant too, is if they can do some research.
Well, actually, that'd be a very good use for the consultant, is to go find out
Yeah.
who else might have.
I would think that that would be one of the first things that the task force could task
That's what I
the
would
consultant with, is doing some quick research to find out where this is done before and in a similar type of town.
And what was the result?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting.
All right. So in terms of next steps forward, I will put this on the agenda for next meeting. I would like to start talking and finalizing the timeline, talk about the task force, and then if we, given how long it took Evan to recruit people for the other task force, I would suggest we start finalizing that and start recruiting people now, especially as we get into summer. The other boards may not have regular meetings, so we want to get them to nominate people sooner rather than later. So we'll start talking about that next week.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
When I think about stuff like this, I'm a very big numbers person. Is there a place to see, like, year over year, the population growth, the percentage of new businesses that have come in, the percentage of businesses that have stayed, their longevity here? I heard a little bit about land use, but, how does the whole town's land use look at the moment? Like, is there, I don't know. I mean, does that exist?
I would think if it does exist, based on some past discussions, Evan would be the one to help us
Because a lot of
compile
this,
that.
yeah.
I don't know if it all exists. Some of the stuff that we were looking at for the MBTA zoning, I think some of the stuff we wanted to get for data, we would have had to use a GIS expert to pull that data from the GIS system.
Okay. Because it just seems like if we're trying to get someplace, it would be good to know where we're at today and kind of a little bit how we got there. Because if you're trying to project where we're going without having the past,
Like
or
how many housing units
Well,
do
I
we
mean,
have 10 years
fundamental
ago?
population and economic data exists. That can be accessed, I'm sure, and I bet Evan can find it. It's some of the softer data that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the most recent numbers I saw written on, you see so much stuff. Bless you. Just under 37,000, I thought, or 36,000, that most recent.
We know what their incomes are, we know what the distribution.
The town doesn't collect that, but you can get that from other
Yeah.
sources because they would get it from tax returns, the federal
NEMCOG
government.
may have a bunch of it.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
they may.
NEMCOG did give us some of that stuff when
They
we
did.
were
They
looking
did.
at
Some of it.
Some of that data.
we were looking at the conflict areas.
but I'm thinking also like statistically, like where did it like all of a sudden ramp up, steady out? Like how is it doing in chunks? Because this is a plan for how many years that we're trying to do? Like,
That's another thing we have to figure out.
gotcha. What was
What's
the
the
last
time frame?
Well, there was a previous one, right? What was the previous one for?
No, there hasn't.
hasn't
There's
been.
never been.
Okay.
We've had master plans that
Yeah.
are
They're 10 years.
10 years.
Well,
but
then it was one for 10 years and then an update.
I think this needs to be really projecting out, in my opinion, like a 30-year projection of where we want to be, and then kind of back into what's the rough path to get there.
Like a 10, 20, 30 or something like that,
Yeah.
some sort of gradation. Yeah, I mean, I think Sarita raises a really good point. The other thing I was thinking related to that I wasn't going to bring up, but I will now because you did that, was some kind of metrics. How do we establish in some quantifiable way that we're making progress to our objectives or our goals? How can we verify that, yes, in fact, when we do X, Y, and Z, it's actually resulting in what we want? The first thing we have to identify is, well, what do we want?
What do we want?
Yeah, what are our specific goals in terms of the metrics that we want to
But
track?
I think,
Because
where are we vis-à-vis where we were 10 years ago or 20 is, because Paul stood up there and said, a lot of people don't want growth, but growth is inevitable. And I think that's true. So in our willy-nilly way that we've been growing, how much have we grown? And, how do we feel about the way we've grown? I think.
We also talk about like the future infrastructure and everything, like at what speed are we going or when are we going to be out? When does stuff have to occur? It's like, there's a lot of like numerical stuff that
Moving
has to
parts.
look at it, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't take that and just say is what it is, but you can use that data to kind of, flex and look at the information. If it comes in a way that you can, review it.
Process.
But I'd be interested in what your list is of like things that you'd want to see and why. Because I think that would be helpful to, get some sense of how do we think we can actually measure some of this stuff.
Yeah, because I know at the last time I was kind of like just ticking off a few things that I'd like to start seeing. And then from that information, I'm sure there's other things we could come up with that we want to see more of.
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
All right. So next meeting, we'll start talking about all of these details. We'll talk about the timeline, the composition of the task force and getting that spun up. Like we talked about earlier, I do want to define specific goals and definition of done for the task force. Come up with some metrics for what we want to see, and then talk about what that horizon could look like. So we'll talk about all of that next meeting.
And also, I'm going to start looking at the strategic plan and the master plan, and I can look at the environmental, open space, the land use, and the economic development, unless somebody wants to take one of those things. But
Yeah, I would say also that the master plan will be pretty good in those areas.
it will be, because I already saw some of it, and
Yeah,
it was
it's pretty good.
it's very detailed, it's very specific about what
Now,
should be done.
managed growth, it's not so hot.
Yeah, but it's
But
still,
those
it's a
will
lot
cover.
of stuff in there, but if John could look at fiscal, if Saritha could think about what social might be, I don't know if we can touch infrastructure yet, but I don't know if somebody wanted to look at housing.
I'll look at housing.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay,
you-
that'd be good. I don't know, Marcy, if you want anything? Pick either infrastructure or any one of the four things that I said. You can let me know. But
Alex,
anyway, it'd be good next time to just sort of say, okay, I've looked at what the strategic plan and what the master plan has to say about these things, and these are what my understanding is the guiding principles and core values are, because that's all we're just looking at right now. And then see, do we have any holes, so that we know we need to go get, that's information we need to go get. So, okay, thank you.
And then also think about who's willing to serve on that task force too. Because the planning board will be key members of that task force. All right.
Which will probably be, I mean, based on our conversation last time, it seems like the planning board reps are gonna kind of be trying to corral
I think
or guide, let's say.
we can talk about it next meeting, but I think we should, as a planning board, essentially be the steering committee for that
Right.
task force.
Yes.
I don't necessarily think that a planning board member needs to chair the
No.
committee or the task force. I have someone in mind already. And hopefully I'll have an answer next week. But I think that we as a board, once we talk about some of those things, the goals, the timeline, the metrics, definition of done, I think it'll be a good starting point for us to be a steering group for that task force. All right. Anything else on that topic?
That's enough.
All right. Oops. I was wondering. There. All right. Next item, Cushing Place Bridge.
It sounded like we were waiting.
Yeah.
I think there are two things I think we need to do based on town council's advice. I think we need to figure out what we want to do for, I think there needs to be two things that need to be clarified before things happen. Timeline for completion and then specifications for construction. I think those two things need to be clarified before we figure out what next steps to take.
Well, I guess before that, I mean, the question is, do we even want anything to happen?
Yeah.
Good
I
question.
mean, do we just want to say, it's in the past, take the money and run, and But if we really want the footbridge, that's a different thing.
Yeah, it was-
Yeah, and I think we have to be careful about not trying to get the footbridge just because we said it and darn it, we're not gonna have anybody, say otherwise. Is it needed?
Right.
Yeah, here's my concern with that. So I was reading all that memo. I know we won't get into many specifics, but what I've found over the years, so it seems like reading the memo, the planning board at that time, their definition of the footbridge and the developers are far apart. And my concern is just being involved in various departments. You have to be really careful when someone says, town, I want to donate something, like it could be a gazebo or a memorial, and say, here, I want to donate this. And then when we accept it, the town has to take care of that forever, in perpetuity. So I'm thinking maybe if we force someone to install a footbridge that may not be up to what DPW thinks will be the best, we might be sorry long term. I'm wondering, this may sound crazy, would it be better to try to get a monetary donation to do like some kind of sidewalk or beautification around that site that someone could maybe walk or have a, sit at a bench near that area?
Well, there is a pocket park there anyway.
Okay.
I mean, if you listen to the resident speaking at town meeting who lives in
The
Gristmill,
Yeah.
I mean, they don't really want people over there.
Yeah, that kind of came across at a past town meeting. So.
Yeah. Like when there was a conversation about putting an easement next to the
The Brook
the
Walk.
Acton.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
So I'm just thinking, would it be better to get a monetary donation and call it a
do
day
something
and
more-
do
yeah, do
something
something
else?
more
But
useful.
the hard part is figuring what to do with it. But maybe the bridge, because I'd rather see that, and this is just my own personal opinion, than try to compel someone to build a bridge that's not going to be up to DPW standards, and then the town's ultimately probably going to have to fix it or replace it way in on the future. And
Yeah, the challenge, though, is that if we're looking for the monetary donation, they've already offered an amount. If we want anything more than that, I think we would still have to go through these steps to figure out what that amount needs to be. And I'm not even sure they'd agree to that. So I guess, what are people's thoughts on?
I personally would love a bridge.
Well, the truth of the matter is, traffic across that bridge is not going more than 5 miles an hour. You can walk across the bridge. There's not a pedestrian safety issue, really, for walking across what's there now rather than having a separate bridge for it. Yeah, the aesthetics might not be perfect, but the safety isn't an issue. So
What
how
is
important is it?
the bridge that we're talking about? Is it just along that
Yeah, right next to the
Short
existing roadway.
road bridge,
probably.
or does it extend further?
Well, a bridge is just a bridge. It goes over.
Well, this is it says bridge in our
Yeah.
agenda, but I think based on what I remember reading and seeing on the plans, it was more than just a bridge. It was a full walkway.
Well, it was a connection
It was
to the walkway.
it
The walkway, I think,
it
was
was
separate.
meant to enhance connectivity from one
Yeah.
side of the, like, they gave an easement of a path down along the brook, and then,
And then the bridge connects to that and takes you over.
But the
to
bridge is
side.
just one piece of it.
right. I mean, there's a lot of aspects of this that have been problematic. I mean, there, on the other side, the engineer for the gristmill 2 that never got built, but they had donated a strip of land
Yeah.
behind Fishbones, but then there was a problem with the grade and the width and the
some
ability to
built-out
put an
considerations.
ADA path, and I don't really know what, maybe the Mass EPA had a problem with it being too close to the water. There was a lot of people involved in that, but it fell by the wayside for what, I don't know what exact reason. It sounded like there was a number of red flags for that project, but yet the land was, like John's saying, I mean, the land was donated for a purpose, and then it didn't ever work.
As much as I would love a bridge and Brook Walk and all of that, I feel like, I think this specific case may be, I'm going to use a really bad pun, water under the bridge. Ouch.
I just want to
And-
apologize to the people listening at home.
And I think maybe we chalk it up to lessons learned and
Yeah.
Move
you know,
on.
I think you may be
That's-
right.
That's exactly where I'm at, too.
And I think
But
that,
but the question is, what is the lesson learned?
To be very, very specific when you are
Throwing
taking
conditional.
things like that in exchange for things that you're
and even more
Giving
specific than being specific on the plans,
on the plans, on the
on the
timeline,
conditions,
on the
timeline.
costs, on the cost sharing, you know, on the
On
purpose.
the maintenance,
the
on the
maintenance,
objective.
Yeah.
Good.
all of that.
Yeah.
Good. That's a good lesson learned.
Yeah.
And I think we've been doing that.
Well, I think
a
we
new
may have
board.
learned the lesson.
Yeah.
It's just, we're just looking back on it now.
So as much as I think we would like the bridge, are folks okay with dropping this and
I am.
not taking any further action?
Well, I would take the money.
And run.
Well,
I think it's incumbent upon the town.
I think, yeah.
And we could talk to council, but maybe see if we can work something out where they make a donation and then we
Yeah.
sign some kind of a release
Yeah.
that releases
Yeah, I
them
mean, there's
from
gonna be
further.
paperwork surrounding this whole
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
See if that makes sense.
yeah. But yeah, that's what I'm in favor of.
Deirdre, you seem hesitant.
I mean, I liked the center beautification plan.
I do too, but I think, like you said before, sections of it have been so problematic that even if this one goes forward, I'm not sure the overall benefit is there. And I think it feels like
should-
maybe the town needs to take a step back and look at it again more holistically and maybe come up with a new,
Right, maybe
Plan of
we should
attack.
ask the Center Village District to take the fact that the pocket park didn't work down behind Fishbones and the bridge also was fraught with issues, and in that context, come up with a new Center Village beautification that may be more fiscally and
Practically,
politically practical.
yeah.
okay?
And then the money, we could apply towards that.
Yeah.
But I also don't necessarily think, I mean, do we have confirmation that 15,000, was that really always the number, or that's just the number they're saying now?
I
My understanding, that's the number they're saying now.
That's,
Right.
yeah, but I think that's.
I don't think,
On what-
I don't feel like we should just take that. When someone offers you a number, that's not the number.
well, so because no number was
Negotiation.
ever
What are you willing to
discussed,
pay to have us leave you alone?
so part of the issue is that no number was ever discussed in the original planning.
Right.
So that is the first number. But I think, like I said before, in order to push for anything more,
We'd
you
have
would,
to have something that you're asking for.
right. And in order to do that, you would have to come up with designs and you essentially have to look at moving forward with these two pieces of information first.
Well, I'll have to add another point, which is if you walk down along there, there's pipes, there's all kinds of stuff that never got cleaned out of the brook. That was also part of the plan, so maybe
That's
we could
also a Concom issue, though. But again,
But I mean, if we're gonna have money for beautification for something that they didn't do, I mean, maybe it could be applied to that.
If
I
there's
mean,
a-
that's, you're right, that's not our business, but,
Well, our jurisdiction is what conditions we put on.
Yeah.
And conditions that we can verify, right? So this is a case where we didn't provide the necessary information to be able to enforce this condition. So if there are other conditions, are they in a similar state? I don't know. But we would have to point to a very specific condition. Say, you have not met this, you need to do it. Enforcement of our condition, that's what it amounts to, right?
but I'm not even sure those conditions were in there.
Yeah, right, that's what I'm saying. So I'm not sure they are,
I don't think there are.
yeah.
That was
So
the problem.
Can't enforce it.
It's possible that it might have been in an NOI for Concom.
Right, then Concom would have to do it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Are you our representative to Center Village?
Yes.
Because there's something, it says something else, it says you on the website, I think.
That says Mike on the website.
Oh, Mike Raisbeck?
Yep.
I thought- Yeah,
Are those on the website?
Yep.
our liaisons.
Oh,
Yep. That is
I-
Mike listed as the Center Village person.
we can fix that.
I was asked about that, and I said, no, I'm
Provides
pretty
you
sure
some
it's
energy.
That's
Nancy.
me, yeah.
I didn't realize they were up already. I
Yes.
can work with Evan and Becky.
So Mike gets all the hate mail then.
That would be right, yes. As long as it's not coming to me, we're all set. I don't know, those things seem to come to me. They always get lost. Someone puts an extra E in my name somewhere.
Yeah.
Quite frequently, I've gotten like, we sent this to the wrong email. I'm like, yeah, you added an E that doesn't belong.
All right, so given that discussion, are we okay with instructing Evan to work with the parties in town council to get that monetary amount that
Yes.
they've offered?
Well, what are they giving it to us then for? If we're not building a bridge and they're not building a bridge, are they gonna even give us any money?
Well, that's where John's comment was,
Let's find
have a
out.
discussion with them about making
Yeah.
a contribution to improvement of some kind. It's a way of settling
Maybe
this
in
thing.
lieu of holding them to the whole,
Exactly.
trying to hold them to the whole idea of
Exactly.
building a bridge.
Exactly. We drop our issue of the enforcing the condition in exchange for that.
15 seems way too low for that.
I agree, however, it's gonna require a lot more effort.
How about if we
and
say
I'm-
25 to drop it?
I'm not sure, we don't have anything to justify that. We don't have designs.
They don't have anything to justify
We can
15.
we can
find-
just let Evan and town council
There we go.
Let them
negotiate
sort it
that.
out.
Yeah.
You could probably find a similar project somewhere with a cost associated with it. There's got to be something there.
I guess what I'm saying is we probably shouldn't discuss our strategy of
Right,
negotiation.
Yeah.
in a meeting.
Yeah,
In public.
let them work it out based on their good sense.
All right, so I will talk to Evan, have him and town council work on getting a contribution to beautification in exchange for a release.
And it's not 15.
It's going to keep going. The price
Then-
guy.
Marcy, since you're the liaison,
Well, according to the website, it's Mike, you know.
or I could have Evan talk to them about our plans and really asking them to go back to the drawing board with a more fiscally appropriate and realistic plan for beautification of that area.
Yep.
Because I'm not sure the alternative. I think the alternative path would be a ton of work, and I'm not sure.
In a fight, and maybe
Yeah.
no meaningful outcome.
Yeah,
That's
I don't think we'd get very far. So, all right. Liaison updates.
Nothing here.
Housing Advisory's meeting, I think next week.
Center Village hasn't sent out a meeting notice yet, so nothing here.
I have a really big one. So, there we go. The Vinyl Square Strategic Action Plan Committee met the other night on Monday, and they had a lot of different items that they were talking about. A good portion of it, they're trying to revitalize and talk about McKay Library out there. They had the librarians there talking about ways of what people want to see, so there was a good discussion. They another topic that was up there for a lot is the clock planning that's going on for that area.
The clock?
Yes.
They're putting a clock in there. A lot of discussion was happening over what it was going to look like and how it was going to affect parking, and the fact that the clock's going to have to maybe move in 6 years when they finish that area. So I had a few concerns. A couple other people did too about they basically sold a lot of bricks to raise money, and they need to use that in the design. And by using it in the design in the area they're looking at, green space is limited. So the pocket park is a little bit less green, so they played around with it. Bricks, like a brick to go around the clock.
Aren't green.
So they're trying to take a space, and they're also trying to be cognitive of all the parking in that area because they're doing the electric parking as well. One fun thing that kind of came up is we were discussing with electric charging stations, should they be one for handicap, because going forward in the future, I mean, more than just everyone's going to need a space that you can charge in. So that did come up, and it was talked about as a possibility of being maybe one of the first places in town that you could have that. But they're trying to change the parking not heavily and still have the same amount of spaces. So that limited that pocket park area to a slim area. And the clock's going to kind of be like on the side. They talked about putting the park in the green space, but there's too many trees and there's going to be constructions when they redo that whole space. So they're working right now to try to come up with a in-between strategy of everything that we saw that maybe has a little bit more green. So we'll see what it looks like. It'll be interesting. I mean, they're trying to beautify that whole area, and we'll see where it goes. That's kind of like the little on that. They also talked about it was the Mass DOT public information session that is coming up, I believe, on July 8th at the police station for traffic improvements. They're ready for it. There's like a lot. The 3040 Vinyl Square, there was a parking lot lease over there that they were concerned with. I guess they had it for $1 for 30 years, and they were concerned with not being able to lease it again, but that property owner is very interested in still allowing them to lease it. But he's also wants to do some stuff to his parcel of property behind it, so that might be something that comes here in the future. And as far as what might go there, I did ask that question, and they were thinking maybe condos or something, so I'm not fully sure of that, though. Let's see. They talked about the Mass DOT 25% design. Christine says that's ready to be put in, but it was still coming back, so that wasn't finalized. Talked a lot about sidewalks. Freeman Lake, which I think came to ComCom this week. The Vinyl Square Strategic Committee endorsed it. Ledge Road, that hearing got continued to be June 5th. And let's see, they talked about Watton Street area and the boat ramp. That's still not moving forward yet. They talked about the cell tower, possibly doing a balloon test to see what it would look like over at Richardson Road. They talked about the fire station and ways to make it look not so much like a warehouse. Still in discussion. It was a lot of. Well, they just redid it, and they're talking about adding things to it. Maybe like they looked at the lettering on it, possibly doing molding to it because it's just a square building. So, there's a lot of things they're trying to do to make that space not look older. Because when you walk through that area, it is, some of the stuff's very aged, and you know, it would be great to see more green space in there. I mean, that little park that's there in the middle, which you can't really get to
You mean
safely.
the common?
Common, yeah, which is hard to get to. That's very nice, but when you come forward, it's like, just needs some more, so. They do have some arborvitaes and some people have put flowers, but
In the common?
no, around the businesses. So it's good. I mean, they're trying to do stuff, and they do have banners up for businesses advertising, I guess, in the parade and things like that. So those are up in that area. So that's what I have. A lot of things. So any questions, you can let me know.
Yep. And at the Board of Health, I asked the questions that I was commissioned to ask. So the question was, does the Board of Health inspect massage establishments? Are there rules and regulations the Board of Health applies with regards to massage? And the answer is no.
No and no.
And no and no. And then also asked, do they get complaints about massage? They said no. And they haven't as far as they can remember. So it's kind of really a non-issue with Board of Health. There was an interesting discussion that probably it was like a 2-hour meeting. A lot of the meeting was taken up, but there was a lot of very interesting discussion about prohibiting septic in Zone 2.
Huh.
And basically, there was a specific application that they were responding to that they had already given approval to do septic there. And then they then felt that even though they wanted to prevent septic in Zone 2, that they couldn't sort of retract their decision. And so instead, they agreed to send a letter to the person essentially saying, you know, we are going to be in discussion because DPW denied them sewer, and so because it's a residential kind of thing, and so then the Board of Health was going to have a discussion with DPW about that. They did not feel that they could declare an emergency, which they have the right to do, but they need an LSP to essentially identify that there is an environmental hazard from putting sewer there, and they didn't feel that they could get that. But they did want to talk with DPW, and they also identified to the applicant that even though they've given approval, that at some point in the future, they may prohibit septic in a Zone 2, and that the landowner might want to consider that. So there's definitely, very clearly, the Board of Health has expressed a concern and a desire for there not to be septic, in Zone 2, and they're continuing to move in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was interesting to see.
Did they give a reason for why they didn't want it?
Well, largely because of part of the whole reason why the whole town went on sewer was to prevent the possibility of, the impacts that it would be to our water supply. And because essentially our town water comes from our town wells, and then the Zone 2 is essentially the recharge area for those wells, that it's a way of basically proactively preventing things from getting into the water. So the concern isn't just the sewerage. The concern is that people will put things into their septic, thinking that it's not going to impact anything. That is part of what was suspected that happened at 270, although we don't have any proof of that. But that is a known situation that people would pour like floor wax into the septic, and then that's where some of the PFAS can originate from and stuff like that. So in general, their desire was that in recharge areas to not have septic, and that just fits the overall original intent of getting sewer for the town anyway. And they just don't like this idea of the onesies and twosies here and there allowing it, but they would just rather prohibit it.
It sounds important for our other things that we were talking about earlier. Like if you have a whole area of town that you can't do, septic, and you need to have a higher level of sewer. That seems important.
Yeah.
Right, so that would drive something like Paul's
Right.
10-year plan of getting onto the, whatever it is.
Middlesex sewer line.
Middlesex, yeah. MWIR or
Yes,
something.
something like that, some bunch of letters.
Any updates on their gap analysis?
Yes. Yes and no. I have to consult my notes for this because it was very specific.
Because I would think the gap analysis would also address that issue.
The timeframe for the gap analysis was that it'd be a 10-month period, but because of some of the initial delays, that they're about 3 months into it. So they expect that there will probably be another 7 months before the consultant moves to, I guess, publish something or have people meet about it or what, I don't know.
Can you follow up with them to find out?
I'll keep trying to follow up, yeah. I get a clearer answer each time.
So is it 7 more months before the next
So
step happens?
We
or
may
is it-
converge on some clarity at some point, yes.
Or is it 7 months
I'll try to.
until the end result?
I'll try. They were, I will keep asking.
Thank you.
And Aaron is my, my liaison buddy there, so.
So I would
see what we
also,
can do.
Aaron won the long meeting liaison assignments.
I'm bummed I missed that one.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it
it would
was
be
a good
good to
one.
also get some details as to what the next steps are. Like, are we actually going to get some follow-up discussion with this
Yeah,
consultant?
I believe that the actual, like, sort of time frame for it is something that I may be able to get more insight into in the future.
Thank you.
We'll see. But I'll keep asking.
In terms of lessons learned, that's something I don't want to be doing for our task force
Yeah.
consultant.
Yep. And then with regards to 270, which is a pseudo liaison report, we did get an email this past week, I think it was on Wednesday, where the LSP, Rob Smith, said that they feel that the situation is now under control, which was sort of ironic because we had gotten word from the past weekend that there was that there were no piles that were covered. But then after receiving that email from Rob, I've been by there multiple times and I've seen the pile covered. So I think the covering of the pile has now successfully been repeated at least on multiple occasions. So hopefully it'll continue that way.
Good.
That's it.
And nobody bought the dirty dirt.
I don't know anything about the buying of dirt. I didn't go there.
In terms of Concom, they had the NOI hearing for the comprehensive treatment plan for Freeman Lake. It passed, so they are moving forward with the comprehensive plan, which does include harvesting first and then a 3-year plan for chemical treatment as well.
For invasives.
For invasives, yep. Yep. There were some citizen concerns regarding 10 Hildreth that were raised by the neighbors. Concerns around tree removal that had happened that has not been addressed to the neighbor satisfaction in the order of conditions from the past decision. So the neighbors felt that the order of conditions didn't go far enough in requiring the current owner to restore some of the trees that were removed. So the board heard that, or the commission heard that, and took it under advisement. They do have a new member on the commission. They're back to a full board, a full commission. Ally, I forget her last name, is the new commissioner. So last night was her first meeting. That's pretty
to have a
much
woman.
it. Yep,
That said the same thing.
She's also in the town clerk's office.
that's right. Any other liaison updates? All right, any other new business? All right, has everyone looked at the meeting minutes?
Went over it briefly, didn't see anything horrible.
Do motions to adjourn require a second?
Usually.
There was no second identified on the motion to adjourn.
Ah,
Who made the motion?
You did.
Was
Didn't-
Anita there?
I think
Oh, Anita wasn't
Anita,
there.
Yeah, it might have been Anita.
Yeah.
Was she there?
Okay,
No, I think wasn't she on Zoom for this one?
She wasn't there last time.
okay.
no, she wasn't there last time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so she wasn't present.
So we'll have to go to the video replay
Yeah,
to check who seconded it.
That was the only thing
all right.
So-
You want to then leave that one until,
Nope, we can, so the way Becky did the last ones is we make a note of the change. She does the update, and then if you look at the meeting minutes, she actually notes
Okay.
what was changed.
In that case, I'll move to approve,
All right, approve with
With
the,
with the changes as noted.
okay, Mike has moved to approve the meeting minutes from May 28th with the change
Update or whatever.
for the second being added,
Yeah.
according to the video that we'll have to look at.
I'll
I'll
second
second.
it.
I heard John first.
did too.
John second. And everyone was here, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, unanimous.
Now,
So,
let me try this motion to adjourn again, and this time we'll get the second recorded.
Mike has moved to adjourn.
Second.
Deirdre has seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.